Okay, so we're going to model this cabinet door. We're going to make a reasonable representation of how a cabinet door might be made. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to use one solid plank of wood to do that. Now, typically they don't do that. Typically these are all like maybe 4 parts or maybe 5 parts that are all put together. You have a side piece over here, another side piece over here that are routed on the edges and routed on the inside too. Then you have a part down here and a part up here with the routed edges too, and then you press them together and it kind of looks like one continuous piece. But it really isn't. But it's a reasonable representation of how to put something like this together, because from a distance you wouldn't be able to do that. Otherwise we'd have to create an assembly out of it. So we're going to create a simple cabinet door, but we're going to include everything in that cabinet door that you would normally find, including those routed edges. So we're going to start from the very beginning over here. We're going to take a look at the front view and look at our basic dimensions. We're going to get that rectangle in here. We're going to go. We're going to start with 11.5 inches on the bottom, 34 inches on the side, going up, and then we're going to extrude that with a draft angle to it. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at the draft angle up here. You can see that in the top view, and also read your notes over here too. So it says base feature on front plane, extrude to the rear. You want to make sure you do that. That way we can get that draft angle in there correctly. So the maximum dimensions in here are going to remain. If you did this in a different direction, then the draft would actually grow, and it would exceed the dimensions that we have in here. So we want to make sure our maximum dimensions in there are that way, and then the draft angle is going to be towards the back. So what that does is it kind of provides a little bit of a surface here in there that you can get your fingers behind to be able to pull that door open without actually having a handle on it, and that's the reason for that draft. So we're going to extrude that to the rear. And we're going to use that draft angle in order to make that work, and then we're going to check our mass properties. Something you might want to check is the material. It's going to be beech wood. And yeah, so let's get that started. 11.5 inches, 34 inches, 6-inch draft angle. Let's get started. So you want to make sure you open up your inches template file. Let's go ahead and choose our material. So we're going to go down here to wood, close steel out here, and then go down here to wood. So we're looking for beech. And we're going to apply that, and then we're going to close. So front plane, sketch. We're going to go to perhaps a center rectangle. Sketch that out. So remember, it's going to be 11 on the top, 11.5 on the top, and then 34 inches on the side. And then we're going to extrude that, and we're going to extrude that to the back. Then we're going to extrude that by, we didn't get that distance, so let's go ahead and take a look at our drawing in here to make sure we know what that is. It's going to be 3/4 of an inch, as we can see on that top view. So type in 0.75. We want to make sure we reverse the direction, so we're kind of looking at the front here, and we see the yellow preview coming out at us. We want to make it go in the opposite direction, and then we're going to put in our draft angle, and that's going to be 6 degrees. If you do that, go to the green check mark. Bang, we have that in place. So let's go ahead and go to evaluate mass properties and make sure we take our options, and we're going to move that up. So what we're looking for are 3 units after the decimal. Take our slider, put that all the way up to the top, go to OK, and we're looking at a mass of 5.879 pounds. See if you got that? 5.879 pounds, center of mass is going to be 0, 0, and then a negative 3.374 on the z-axis. And it looks like we have that correct. So make sure you save your feature, save your part so far. But we're going to call this our base feature, and instead of Boss Extrude, we're going to call that base, or base feature, and then we'll be ready for our next step. Okay, so our next step is we're going to go ahead and sketch this sketch out. We're going to put this on the top plane, and these are going to provide us with the contours to be able to sculpt out the door a little bit. So if you think about this, this is going to be we're going to be putting like a router bit on the edge of this, as if somebody took that plank of wood and put a router bit in their router and traced it around. What it does is it provides that path for that router bit to go all the way around, and that router bit on the edge is going to be this down here in that sketch. And then we're going to have one over here in the middle. So we're going to create a master sketch with all these sketch elements in there, and then we're going to borrow portions of that sketch in order to put that in. So it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to take a sketch and deliberately place it in the middle of our feature manager tree, make that sketch active and visible so that we can borrow from that. We're going to borrow from that for the edge over here, and we're going to borrow it again to create that router edge, that router bit on the inside. So let's do this. We're going to go to the top plane. We're going to sketch this out on the right side of that door. And we're going to go ahead and create that, that feature, that sketch feature that we see. So let's go ahead and put that to the side. Let's go to our top plane, and let's just go to sketch. So we're going to go to sketch over here. Let's go normal to the screen so we can see what we're going to do. Now we're going to sketch this out. So we're going to start over here on the right, and we're going to sketch out this detail in here. And you want to take a look at this. What we have down here in the corner is we're going to go ahead and sketch a line, which is going to be collinear with that edge over here. We're going to put an arc on the top, and then yet another arc over here, and we're going to define that by this distance relationship in here, this vertical distance relationship over here. Then at that point over here, we're going to go ahead and create a center line that goes down and straight from that point up there. The reason why we're going to do that is we're going to put a 1/4 inch dimension from that line to that point. You got to remember, it's always better just to put a dimension between lines and points rather than points to points. I've been kind of nagging about that lately. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's think about the dimensions we're going to put in. 3/16 of an inch going up, 1/4 of an inch going over on that arc. That defines that arc. 3/8 of an inch going over here on the very bottom, the maximum length. And then that should define that arc over here. So think about this arc over here. We're going to make the center point of that arc down here on that center line. So that's important that we do that. And then, well, let's just get started on that. So we're going to go ahead and take a line. We can go from this point up here and exaggerate that a little bit. We can take this line and that edge, make that collinear to each other, or just drag it on that. Either way will work. Let's go ahead and put a dimension on that. So the top part of that line is going to be, that point up here is going to be blue. Or not blue, it's blue right now. We're going to make that black. And we're going to put in this dimension. Remember, this is going to be a vertical dimension in here. You don't want to dimension a line in here. We could do that, essentially, and do something like that. And that's not exactly what we're looking for. We want to make sure that dimension is going to be measuring horizontally, or vertically, I should say. So we're going to click on this edge down here and that point, and that's going to force it to do that. So 0.1875. Oops. 0.1875. Oh, still can't get it. 0.1875. So it's only given us, just make sure, it's only given us 3 digits after the decimal. Just make sure we see 4, so we know we're getting the right value in there. Let's go ahead and scoot in a little bit on this too. So now we're going to take that center line. Again, the center line is going to be there, so we can actually dimension from that and provide other relationships in here. We're going to go ahead and sketch that arc on the top, but let's get this bottom line in here first. If we take this line over here, we can create that coincident relationship on that. And remember the distance on this line now, we are going to, because that's going to be horizontal, we're going to create that dimension to be 0.375, I should say. Now let's go ahead and do perhaps a 3-point arc. We're going to start up here and kind of sketch out that general area and bring that up over here. So I think we're going to go ahead and take that center point of that arc and put that on that center line in here, make that coincident. And let's see what other dimensions we need to consider over here. So it's going to be 1/4 of an inch from that point over here, or not that from that point. Essentially, it's from that point. We're going to dimension from that vertical center line to that point out here on that arc. Remember, a dimension between points and lines is always better than between points and points. So between that line and that point, it looks like it's already selected. We're going to make that 0.25. Now fully defined. If you take an endpoint down here, you can see what we need to do. We need to define the endpoint of that point down here, and that should work. So let's go ahead and take that second arc in here and put that in. We could do a tangent arc, perhaps, from that point over here to that point down here. So we have that tangent relationship in here. And now we're going to take this point here, the center of that arc, and that line, we're going to make that coincident. And when we do that, it makes it fully defined. So let's go ahead and take a look at this and see what we have in here. We're going to see that coincident relationship in here, if I can scoot in on that. Kind of hard to see, but there's that coincident relationship. Or that's a coincident relationship up here. We have another one down here. And we have a horizontal relationship with that line. So the center of that arc is right here. Center of this arc is right down there. And if you have that in place, then we are on our way. Okay, so let's sketch some more. Remember, we're creating a master sketch in here that we're going to borrow from in order to create 2 different features. And those features are going to be the router edge and the edge of the door, and then the routed elements on the inside of the door. So let's go ahead and borrow from our sketch in here that we have in here. We're going to put a 2-inch dimension in here between the start over here. So we're going to start with this vertical line in here. We're going to go up and do an arc over here. Looks like the center point of the arc is going to be up here. So we're going to go ahead and resolve that. And I think that center point of that arc is going to be coincident with that line. So you want to make sure that you think about that and how to put that together. There's no other element up here in order to make a relationship in here except that vertical line. So we're going to put that over here. Essentially what that means is that when you take a line out here, a horizontal line out here, is going to be perpendicular to that if it's tangent to that arc. So kind of think about that. So vertical line in here, put in that arc, coincident relationship up here between that point of the midpoint of that arc and that vertical line. Then we're going to put in a dimension up here of a 1/4 of an inch between that point and this edge down here. So again, between like a line and a point, that's good. Now we're going to do a style spline, and we're going to style spline that thing out with 3 different points, 4 points if you include the end, 5 points if you include this point over here in order to get that in place. Now we're going to have a 1-inch dimension on that edge down here. So let's put this together. So we're going to start over here. We're going to start with that vertical line in here. We're going to go ahead and sketch that up. Let's go ahead and put our dimension in here. We're going to do the easy stuff first. So we're going to put a 2-inch dimension there. So that line is fully defined, except for the end point of that line. Then we're going to take that that horizontal line and put that on the bottom, and that's going to be 1 inch. So we're just going to dimension that one line, just the line itself. We're going to put that in place. So over here, we're going to put in an arc. We're going to choose 3-point arc. Start from this, kind of sketch that up, and kind of get the basic form of what we're looking at. And now we're going to take the midpoint of that arc and this vertical center line, going to make that coincident. Now we have some other dimensions in here too, and we have a 3/4 of an inch dimension between where this arc is and this line down here. So let's go ahead and put that in, 0.25. And now we want that arc to be a little bit closer over here. So that's not going to work until we define this. So if you look at our sketch over here, let's go ahead and define this a little bit better. It's going to be 0.060 inches for the length of that vertical line. So let's go ahead and put that in. So smart dimension, we're going to go ahead and sketch between that line itself, 0.060. So that defines that a little bit better. And then we're going to have a 3/4 of an inch dimension between this vertical line and this point. So again, we want to make sure that this is fully defined as we go so we don't have to try to define this later. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Now we have all our dimensions in place. We have this one, and that 1/4 inch dimension. Now we're going to put in our style spline. 5 points starting here, 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 and here. So it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pardon me, 4 points, not 5. But we're going to put that in place. So style spline, not regular spline, style spline. So we're going to start over here. We're going to sketch that out. 1 over there, 2, 3, and then 4 down here. Do escape, that kind of gets that in place, so we have that flexibility here with our lines and points that we have. So let's take a look at our sketch in here and see what we need to do to define that a little bit better. So this line up here, that's going to help define the style spline. That center line up here is going to be horizontal with a 1/2 inch dimension. This one's going to be vertical over here with an 1/8 of an inch dimension. I think once we do that, we should get that in place. So let's go ahead and put this in. We're going to make this line up here. We're going to make that horizontal. We're going to make this line over here. We're going to make that vertical. And then what we have in between is going to be defined. So this line over here, we're going to make that a 1/2 inch, 0.5. It's going to be an 1/8 of an inch. So we're going to go ahead and sketch, put a dimension on that line itself. Bang. It's all ready to go. So let's go ahead and rebuild this. Go to the green, or not to the green check mark since we're in a sketch. We're going to go ahead and rebuild. And what that does, it puts that sketch in the middle of our tree. So let's go ahead and rename that sketch before we save our file. And instead of sketch 2, let's go ahead and call that our master router sketch, or something similar. And then let's go ahead and save our file. Okay, so now what do we do, huh? What do we do now, big shot, you're probably saying? Well, now we're going to router the edge of that. So if we take a look at this, we have that edge. You can barely see it over here. We have that sketch, not that edge, on the top plane. So it's sitting there right in the middle of our model, and it's visible over here in a feature manager tree. We know that because if we look over here, we can see the blue profile of that. Kind of shows that it's going to be showing. It's got color to it. Whereas the sketch that's not showing is going to be kind of a thin line up here, and it's going to kind of have a black and white kind of look to it. So we're going to take that master router sketch and we're going to borrow that, as if we're going to sketch from the very beginning, but we're going to be using convert entities to do that. So the way we do that is we're going to go to our top plane, and we're going to go to sketch. On that top plane, we're going to go to convert entities, and now we're going to scoot in on this, and we're going to go make sure you have select chain. And we're going to go ahead and select on that sketch element in there. So now we have that in place. Right click on our mouse, puts that element in there. No dimensions on it. We have our on-edge sketch relation. So when we change our master router sketch in the background, it's going to change this too. But we're not going to do this in this exercise. So we're going to go ahead and rebuild this. So we're going to call this our profile. In fact, we're going to call this, since we're going to have more than one profile, we're going to call that profile 1. And then we're going to have our path. So now we're going to create our path. So remember, a sweep feature, whether it be a cut or a swept off space, these sweep features are going to require 2 independent sketches. Next thing we need to have is a path. So we're going to go ahead and, because this is real easy, we're going to go ahead and click on that surface, go to sketch, convert entities, bang, now we have that in place. Go ahead and rebuild, and then we're going to call that our path 1. So we have our profile, our path. Now we're going to go ahead and sweep that around. So let's go ahead and select these. We're going to do path first. Or not path first. We're going to do our profile first. Path second with the control key. Go up here to features. What we're looking for is up here called sweep cut. It's going to give us the profile there. So it's going to ask for the profile first. So I believe, sometimes it doesn't always work, if you pick the profile first and the path second in your selection before you go to the tool, it's going to automatically put those in the right location. Then all we have to do is go to the green check mark, and bang, now we have that profile in place. It's going to be in the front. So let's just double check this before we move on. Let's go to evaluate mass properties to see if we got that correct. Let's bring our drawing back in and see what we have. So front door edge sweep. The mass should be 5.776, which we have. And off only in the z-axis by negative 0.379. And what do we have here? Oop, not quite right. Nope. Yeah, we do have that right. I was looking at this number here, up here. So it looks like negative 0.379 is correct. So let's go ahead and rename that. This is going to be our front edge sweep. Go ahead and close this off. We're going to go ahead and keep the sweep in there. We're going to call that front edge sweep. Save our file, and then we're going to go ahead and work on the middle of the door. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and do some more stuff in here. We're going to do our front inner sweep. What it's going to do is it's going to cut the inside of the door. So we're going to go ahead and put this sweep in here. And we're going to look for our mass properties at the very end. So we want to make sure that we sketch on the right path. So what we want to do is we want to sketch out this path. So essentially it's a centered rectangle in here. 2 3/8 of an inch on the bottom, 2 3/8 inch on the side, both sides over here. Probably should say that in a dimension. And then we're going to go up to the top. It's going to be 3.5 inches from the edge up here to where that line stops on that rectangle. Then we're going to go in some arcs up here. So this arc over here, it appears at the center of that arc is going to be on that line over here that we go up. And then we're going to have an arc over to the top, arc over here, a symmetric relationship between these two arcs, and then back down the other side. So we're looking at 3.5 inches on the top. 2.5 is another dimension at the minimum distance in here, and at 2.375 in the edges. So that's going to be our path. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and select that face. Let's go normal with that face. We're going to make sure we're looking at the front. Now let's go to sketch. Let's go to corner rectangle and go ahead and sketch that in here. So remember, we have 2 3/8 in the bottom. Make sure you click the bottom edge, so 2.375. And then on the sides, we're going to do the same thing. Make sure you select that outer edge, 2.375. And let's go ahead and put a center line in here so we can make that symmetrical. So we're going to go between that bottom edge, go off the model, get up here on the top. And then we're going to go ahead and click on that edge, this edge, and that edge with the control key and select the symmetric relationship. So now we have it almost ready to go. So let's go ahead and take that top line. We're going to make that construction geometry. And again, the way you do that is you click on that line, go to this button up here. It's going to turn that into a center line. And now we're going to go ahead and define the top. So we have one arc up here. We're going to make that a center or a 3-point arc and sketch that up over here. Maybe an arc up. kind of get that form in here, and then we're going to do it again. We're going to take an arc over the top and do that. It doesn't have to be perfect right now. You do want to make sure that these two are going to be tangent to each other. We also want to make sure that that point and this line over here are going to be coincident or vertical. So we're going to make that coincident, and we're going to take the midpoint of this arc so we don't lose. If we just put an arc up to that line, a mirror to the other side, and all of a sudden we lose our relationships in there, this is another way of doing it. So we're going to take the midpoint of that arc and that line with the control key depressed, and we're going to put that into place. And then we're going to take this arc over here and that line, and we're going to make that, we're going to mirror that over. And we're going to take these points with the control key depressed. Probably haven't seen this before, but we can merge those points. So now we have a symmetric relationship between both sides. So let's go ahead and dimension this. We're going to go ahead and do the shift key on this. We're going to select that arc up here, and that line up here is going to give us that dimension. It's going to go automatically to the minimum dimension on that rather than the maximum. We're going to make that 2. And then this one, we're going to go between that point up here and this edge up here. And according to our drawing, that's going to be 3.5 inches. So not quite exactly what we're looking for up here. You know, we still have a lot of flexibility here, so what do we need to do? It doesn't really define what the radius of those arcs are going to be as we look at our drawing, but I think if we make those equal to each other, I think that gets that fully defined. So let's take a look at that and see if that works. And of course, if it doesn't work, we're going to know about that right away. We're going to know about that right away when we do our mass properties. So let's consider this. So that's going to be our path. How are we going to go ahead and route this around that path? So we take a look at the sketch. We have a couple of different choices in regard to how we're going to go ahead and put in this profile onto that path. I believe it's going to be at this point. It actually might resolve itself too if we just go ahead and rebuild this and put in that profile and see where that profile ends up at. But we can actually see the preview of that. You can barely see that in here, but here's our profile sketch, and there's our path. And I believe if we go normal to that, those are going to be right on top of each other. Actually, it doesn't look like it is. But that's okay, because we could always take that profile and put it along that path in whatever condition we want to do that. So if we go ahead and rebuild that, we're going to take this, our sketch 4, we're going to call that our path. We're going to call that path 2. Let's go to our top plane. And then we're going to go ahead and sketch. Convert entities, we're going to go inside of this. Select an entity, you want to make sure you have select chain involved in that, so we're going to right click on that. Again, it's not quite on that, but let's go ahead and see how that works out. We're going to call that our profile 2. And now we're going to do that. We're going to take our profile first, select that first, path second, go up here to features, swept cut, put that into place, go to the green check mark. Now we have the top of our door. So let's go ahead and check our mass properties. A little nervous about this. Did we put this model together correctly? So if we go to evaluate, go to our mass properties, let's go ahead and take our drawing and bring that into play. Get that into screen here and see what we have. So mass properties should be 5.537, which we have. Center of mass should be 0, 0, or 0 on the X. On the Y it should be 0.012, which we have. And then the Z is going to be a negative 0.391, which we have over here too. So to actually make that a little bit better, just because of the concerns I had with our router bit in here, we want to make sure that that actually lines up on our path that we have. So if we take a look at our path and actually show that path, we're going to go ahead and show that. Again, it's going to be off in a different direction. It's just a little bit off over here. And maybe a better thing to do, since this sketch is already embedded in the background, as part of our master router sketch in here, might be a little bit more difficult to change that. But we might consider our path first before we put in our master router sketch. Worked out pretty well here, and we have a little bit of variation. That profile could have been anywhere along that path. We just chose it to be a specific distance between the edge of that profile and where that path is. But either way, for this model, for this exercise, it actually worked out. So let's take our cut sweep. Let's go ahead and rename that to the appropriate name, which is going to be our front inner sweep. And then save your part. Okay, so let's go to our next step, and our next step is going to be the second to last one here. It's going to be our back bumper cut. So we're going to do the back bumper cut, and we're going to borrow the path from that. We're going to do the white back bumper, or whatever color you want to make that. So let's take a look at our stuff that we have in here right now. So if we take a look at our model, we can see that we still have some sketches sitting in the background. They're kind of showing. We could have we used those sketches up till now. But now that we don't need them, let's go ahead and turn those off. So we know where the master sketch is. We can right-click it and tell that to turn off. Now it's going to go back from that blue color with a yellow dot that was there, and it's going to go back to black and white. And this way you can see a little bit more clearly. So our front inner sweep with the profile and the path. Our path is still visible in there. We took our profile, and that's already muted in the background. But we can right-click in this and tell that to turn off too. So now we get all of our sketches off. And one thing you'll notice here is we have a line between surfaces in here, as if we did a split line in this. And what it does is it's kind of showing us that when we started our swept cut feature in here, started here, went around, and ended over here, and it kind of provides an edge and kind of divides that. Now there are ways to get rid of that in this model, which might be a little bit cumbersome, and you can get rid of that in your drawing too when you get to drawings. And when you get to like photoreal rendering, it's not going to show up there either. So there are ways to get rid of that, but for now it's just there to show us that that's where our swept features had started, and that's why that line's there. So let's go ahead and put in that feature in the back. So let's go ahead and spin this around just to make sure. We're going to go to, we're going to click in the spacebar and deliberately choose that back face. If we take a look at our drawing that we have, we're looking at this back face over here. So if you look at the back view, now you can see where we're going to put that groove. So we're going to put that groove over here on the right-hand side. We're going to use these dimensions in here. Essentially, it's just going to be an L, which is going to start over here at about the top plane, go up, and make that left turn up here. It's going to be 1 inch offset from, and let's take a look at this. We want to make sure you have a 1 inch offset. That dimension is going to be from the inner edge rather than the outer edge, because it might be a little bit easier to measure from that if you're working in the wood shop. Now we have 1.5 inches. It's going to be the length of that line. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to put in that fillet. So we're going to remember those numbers: 1 inch, 1 inch, 1.5 inches, and then 5/8 of an inch for our fillet. So let's go ahead and start in the surface. And let's just go to sketch, and let's just sketch this thing out. We might want to, when we brought that line down here, we might want to take a center line and maybe go from the origin out here and pick up that point if we can. So now we have a coincident relationship. We have it horizontal. We have a coincident with the origin down here. So now we have that in place. So let's put in our dimensions. This is going to be 1.5. So we made that a little bit longer than we should have. From the inner edge, we're going to make sure that that's 1 inch. And then this one over here, we're going to make that 1 inch. So there's a lot of opportunity for symmetry here. I deliberately stopped here at this line rather than going all the way down, which I could have. But I could take my sketch geometry that I have in here and just mirror that down to the bottom. Or conceivably, as an alternative, I could put in all my features in here, my cut and the round that we're going to have in the end of that, and then mirror that down to the bottom. That's another way. I'm going to do kind of a combination here. I'm going to go ahead and do a sketch mirror on this, and then I'm going to do a feature mirror on that later. So let's go ahead and put in our fillet in here. Let's put in 0.625 for the value. We're going to go ahead and choose this corner in here. Bang. Now we have that in place. Let's go ahead and take our dimensions and move those around. Escape a couple times gets us out of the fillet command. Now we have that in place. So we're going to right-click in this. We're going to do a sketch mirror. Right-click in that. We're going to select chain, so it selects everything that we need. Click on this line down here, that center line. Then we're going to go up here to mirror, go to mirror entities, and put it on the bottom. Now one thing it does, just to let us know that we once had a line in here that terminated here. And it doesn't do that for arcs. It would be convenient if it did. But it gives us this point in here that we can continue to dimension from as if that line were terminating there. We don't really need that point, so I'm going to go ahead and take that point out. I don't know if there's going to be a consequence to leave it in there or taking it out, but we'll soon find out. The problem with having points kicking around like that is sometimes you change the sketch geometry. These points start going under-defined, and they're really hard to find. So, they may not be apparent. They might be buried on the line here. They might look like they're black, but they're really blue because they're really small, so they're hard to see. And, so I just deleted it. Okay, so now we have that in place. Now we have that path in place. Let's go ahead and rebuild that. And we're going to call this path 3. with our path 3, now we're going to go ahead and do our swept feature. So we're going to click on that. As an alternative, we're going to show you a different way of doing the swept feature. This is going to be a swept cut feature. Well, let's just do it. We're going to go ahead and select path. We don't have a profile. I'm going to show you how to do that. So we're going to go to features. We're going to go to swept cut. And you notice that part of the options up here, we could do a sketch profile, which we don't have, or we could do a circular profile or a solid profile. Circular profile will allow us to define the radius or the diameter of a circle. Very simply, it's going to put that right along that path. Solid profile will allow us to select something like, even though we're playing with routers, there's a way of doing it. You can create actually something that would be like a router bit, with all the profile in that router bit, and have it go around that profile along that path. But I'm not going to demonstrate that here, but know that you have that capability. What you would do is you create a separate solid body, and it would just look just like a router bit, and you put that on the path, and whatever the profile is on that solid body will propagate along that path. Okay, long enough said here. We're going to make this 0.25 with a circular profile, and then go to the green check mark, and bang, it puts that cut in there, hopefully. Let's go to that green check mark one more time, and there we have it. So now we have that path in there. But let's do one more thing in here. Let's go ahead and put in another feature. We're going to do a revolved boss base. What we're going to do is we're going to round this out. So when you have that round ball router bit going in here following that path, and it stops here, it never stops at a dam like that. Never stops at a wall like that. It's always round at the end. It always has to be. And if you want to get a square end like that, if you're going to ask somebody to get a square end like that, they're going to be, they're not going to be pleased with you if you ask that. So let's go ahead and put in that end down here. And very simply, this is really kind of fun to do. We're going to click on that face. We're going to go up here to Sketch, Convert Entities, go over here to Features, Revolve Cut. Axis of Revolution is going to be this guy. Right click, go to OK, and now we have that in place. So that's our end ball. So as if the router bit came up here and ended here. And that's what would happen if you did the swept boss base feature with that solid profile. If you had that router bit as a solid body in here with a rounded end, it would actually look something like that. So you wouldn't have to go through this extra step. Let's go ahead and rename these here. So if we go back to our original drawing and see what it's named. So it's going to be called the back bumper cut. So let's go ahead and call that our back bumper cut. And then, we're going to go ahead and borrow that, and we're going to call that back bumper cut end for this cut revolved. Okay, now we're going to do a mirror feature. So we're going to mirror that feature over here, the back bumper cut end. If we go ahead and select that, go up here to features, go to mirror, and mirror's over here, but it's also underneath the linear pattern. We're going to go ahead and select that. The plane's going to be top, so remember we're all sketching and doing all of our modeling with symmetry in mind, so we always have a plane in the middle of this. We're going to go to the top plane, and now we're going to see the preview of that on the bottom. So there's your yellow preview. You can see what it's going to look like. We go to the green check mark, bang. Now we have that in place. So let's go ahead and rename that. So we're going to, instead of calling that mirror, we're going to call that back bumper cut mirror, or end cut mirror. Cut end mirror. We'll add that in place, because actually we're not really mirroring the back bumper cut. We're just mirroring the back bumper cut end. All right, moment of truth here. Let's go to evaluate mass properties. Make sure we have that correct. So we have 5.519 pounds. Let's go ahead and bring our drawing over here, see what we have. 5.519 pounds. It's off in the X by now. Used to be 0. Now it's 0.14. Y is 0.13, which we have. Z is off by a negative 0.390, which hasn't changed much in a while. And so there you have it. So let's go ahead and think about this. So if you look at our triad down here, it's going to be off in the X. So now we have something that's we have dissymmetry in there with that cut on the right-hand side. So it's off in the X a little bit. And the positive direction too. Because we're looking at the back, it's the positive direction of the X is over here, so it's actually adding more material off here on the left. Of course, the Y is off because of the items in the front. We have that cut over here, so it's off in the in the positive direction because they have a little bit more material on the top than we do on the bottom. But the Z is off in the negative direction. So remember, we extruded that back. And so, that every one of these arrows in a triad means it's going off in a positive direction. Opposite of those arrows is going to be negative. So that's one way to look at that when we're going to mass properties and where the center of mass is going to be and how that's defined by whether it's going to be positive or negative here in the center of mass. Okay, so let's do the back bumper. We have the back bumper cut in here. The last thing we need to do is put in that back bumper. So maybe the thing to do is put that on the top plane. So we're going to start with the top plane. We're going to normal to that and kind of sketch that out and see where our cut is going to be. So let's go normal, do it again. Now let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and take a different view of this thing. Oops, wrong button. We're going to go ahead and click on that guy so we can actually see the profile of the cut we have in here. What did I do? I went up here to the heads up view toolbar, go to display style, and what we want to do is we want to look at hidden lines visible. So speaking of test questions, you're going to have to know each one of these things in here. So know that one is hidden lines visible, and if you go through each one of these things, you can see it. If you brush your cursor over that, you can see a preview of what that is, and actually going to show all of them. Shaded with edges, shaded, hidden lines removed, hidden lines visible, and wireframe. Okay, so we want hidden lines removed, or we want hidden lines visible, so we can actually see what those hidden lines are in the background. And one more thing too, I explained in the last segment about the triad. Understand what I talked about there, because that too will be a test question. Okay, so now we're going to put in our profile for our cut, for our bumper that's going to be in here. It's not going to be a cut, it's going to be a swept boss space feature as a different solid body. So let's go ahead and take a look at our drawing and see what we need to do. We're going to put a circle in here initially. We're going to take the top of that circle and kind of, sketch some of that out. It's going to be a 1/10 of an inch dimension. You notice that we don't have any center lines in here, but it's still symmetric. So I'm going to show you how to put that together. So it's going to be a 1/4 inch circle, 1/10 of an inch gap up here in the top with the center line that's going to go on top of here. And then the center of each one of these arcs is going to be coincident with that center line on top, and that's one way to get symmetry back in there. So, yep, let's go ahead and do this. We're on the top plane. Let's go to sketch. Let's just go to circle, exaggerate that a little bit by putting that out here. We're going to put a dimension on that, maybe 0.25 is what we should have. Then we're going to go ahead and take that to a circle, and that arc that we see in the background, we're going to make that co-radial. How does that not work? Let's go ahead and try that. I know should be able to fit in there. But yeah, let's try that again. Let's go ahead and select these two in here. Maybe concentric will work. Co-radial, concentric. Co-radial should work if they're both the same diameter, but I think what it does is it's going to make that underdefined. So if we just back up a little bit and try that. If we didn't have a dimension on there and did co-radial, there it would work. But because we had that dimension in there, it's not going to do that. So now we're going to make a co-radial. It's going to be black. It's going to be partially defined. So let's go ahead and put in our center line. We're going to exaggerate that a little bit and kind of put it from side to side. Kind of plant that in place. We're going to make that horizontal. Make that 1/10 of an inch. Now we have the start up here. We're going to go ahead and trim that out here in a bit. So now we're going to take an arc, maybe a 3-point arc. We're going to start up here, bring that down there to the center of the circle, bring that over here. Now we want to take the center of that arc and that line. We're going to make that concentric, or coincident, I should say. Now we're going to do the same thing over here. A 3-point arc from that point up here to this point up here. Bring that over here. We want to make sure that the center of that arc and this line up here, that's going to be coincident too. So now we're going to take our trim entities. We're going to trim out that top arc in here to make sure that we have an enclosed geometry, which we do. Now we're going to sweep that. So there's our profile. We have our path in place. We're going to borrow the path from our previous feature that we used. And we're going to go and sweep that around. So let's get back to our view that we're kind of used to, shaded with edges. And let's go to the green check mark over here, the rebuild button. Now we're going to call this our bumper profile. So now we're going to open this up, our swap cut feature. We have a path in here. So we have our path. We're going to go and borrow that path free and our bumper profile in order to put together our swap boss space feature. So we're going to put together our swap boss space feature. So into two independent sketches, a profile and a path. Okay, so features, swap boss space. Let's go and open up our feature flyout. So it's asking for the profile. It's going to be our bumper profile. Our path is going to be inside of this, our path 3. Now you're going to see that, you can see how it's going to be propagated. So now you can see it's only going up rather than down. I don't think there's a way in here to make it go in two different directions. So I don't see that. I think that capability may come with future editions, but we're still inside of a, SolidWorks 2016. But let's do this. We need a new plane for that. I don't think there's another plane we could do, and we could probably take that profile and make it go in the opposite direction of that. But let's do this. Let's go to the red X in here, and this is a good kind of exercise we could use in there. We're going to go ahead and create a plane. We're going to create that plane up here. We're going to use this edge for that plane. We're going to make that plane maybe parallel to the plane that's going to be right in the middle of that, which is going to be the right plane. We're going to put it on that plane, and then it's got that full length of that path that we could use. So we're going to go up to Features, Reference Geometry. We're going to go to Plane. We're going to go ahead and click on this edge over here. And what that does is it provides us with enough contour in here to actually get that fully defined. So we're going to go right on that edge. It's going to be fully defined. We're going to go to the green check mark. And of course, we're going to go ahead and rename that. We'll call that our bumper plane. Erase plane 1, I guess. And now we're going to do that. Now we're going to go ahead and use that bumper plane as a way to put in that sketch. So our bumper profile, we're going to right click it out. We're going to go to Edit Sketch Plane. We're going to take it off the top plane, which is on right now, and put it down here on our bumper plane. Oh, it won't do that. And why? Why? Because it's in the wrong order. Because we have this on top of that bumper plane in there. We can't select it. It's going to be there, but we can't select it. It's gray in the background. But we can take that and move that around. Remember, order matters. We kind of saw a little bit of that in our first week of class. So now we're going to do that same thing again. We're going to go to Select Sketch Plane, go over here to our Feature Flyout. Now we can select the bumper plane and go to the green check mark, and now we have that profile in place. Oh, doesn't like that, but let's go ahead and take a look at this, see what we need to do with that. So now we'll put that down here. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and take our co-radial relationship. Let's go ahead and delete that. And now we can take this circle up here. We can take the edge of that arc that we have up here, and we can make that co-radial. And that should put that into place. So now it's black, it's fully defined. And now we go to our features, and we want to rebuild this. Of course, we want to have an independent sketch in there. We're going to go to Swept Boss Base, go to our feature flyout for our profile. So we're going to go to bumper profile in here. Our path is going to be buried up here, which is going to be a path 3. So now you can see the preview of what we're going to get, and it's going to go all the way around. Go to the green check mark, bing. Now we don't want that necessarily wood, and we want to make sure that this is going to be a separate feature, a separate part, or a separate body. So let's do this. We're going to make sure that we don't have this as being merged. So merge tangent faces, merge results is what we want to look here. We don't want to merge the result. Now if we do that, we're going to get a solid bodies folder. So if we go to the green check mark up here, and now we have a separate body in here. So it's going to be our swap 1. It's going to be the last name of the feature that defines that. And then the last name of the feature that defines the rest of the door is going to be up here. Now with that swept cut feature, or that swept feature in here, we could actually change the properties in that, and then maybe make that white, or make it a different color. So I'm going to go ahead and make that white so it stands out a little bit. Go to the green check mark. Now you can see it kind of looks like it's a different material. It's still going to be beech up here, but it's kind of colored white. What we really want to do is make that rubber. But we have this in one part, and I'm going to cover this in a different video. But you can take different solid bodies out of a part and save those as a different part and apply different material qualities to that. But for this exercise, I think we're going to end that here. We're going to go ahead and take our swap 1. We're going to call that our back bumper. And let's check our mass properties. So if we go up here to evaluate again, mass properties, pull that over here so we can actually see that in a drawing. Let's see what we got over here. So mass is going to be 5.548. 5.548 is what we got there. Off in the X by a negative now 009, which we have. Y is in a positive 0012. And then Z is going to be off by a negative 0392, which we have. Okay, so I think that's done here. Go ahead and save your work. And just as a review, we did a lot of sweep features in this thing. We did a lot of swept cuts, and then we did one SolidWorks Boss base feature in here. Put in a lot of sketch and model geometry in here, including planes, in order to get this all together. But if you follow these steps, you should be able to get something very similar, if not exactly the way you want it to be. And one more thing before we leave this. Let's go ahead and make modifications to our appearance. So we're going to go ahead and right-click in this. If you go to the design manager up here, right-click and we're going to go to appearance. We're going to go over here to map in. What we want to do is we want to take the grain of the wood and actually make that vertical rather than horizontal. And the way you do that is you go to map in, and we're going to take this, our rotation, we're going to make that 90 degrees. So watch that grain as I do that. If we go to 90 degrees, let's go to the green check mark. Now the grain of the wood actually goes up and down. You don't necessarily have to do that, but kind of provides a, kind of a nice visual, correction in there. Kind of makes it appear the way it would really appear in a cabinet door. So that's it. That's your cabinet door model.